Hi guys, welcome to another Django tutorial where we learn by coding. In this video, I'll show you how to prepare your Django application for production and how to deploy it with a PostgreSQL database on Seenode, which is a managed cloud platform that makes deploying Django applications very fast and very easy. We will be practicing on this project that we've created together not so long ago. This video will be divided into three main parts. In the first part, we'll be cloning this repo and getting the movie site to work on our PC. In the second part, we're going to prepare our project for production. For the third part, we will be deploying the project on Seenode. If you like to learn by doing, go ahead and create a Seenode account. Don't worry, you don't need a credit card. There's a free trial. Now, without further ado, let's get coding. Let's begin by creating a new directory and opening it in a code editor. I'll be using Visual Studio Code. Now, let's talk about prerequisites. In order to run a Django project, we're gonna need Python, so I'll double check I have Python with the command py-version. We're also going to need a package manager. I'll be using pip, so I'll just make sure I have it with the command pip-version. We're also going to need Git, so let's check we have it. You'll also need a GitHub or a GitLab account because that's where Seenode will be fetching your project's code from. Today, I'll be using GitHub. Now let's get the project that we would like to prepare for deployment onto our PC. So as you can see, it's already on GitHub. It's a public repo. I'll be sharing the link to it in the description. Anyways, to clone it, I'll click on this button, the one that says code, and then I'll copy the URL to clipboard, and I'll go to my terminal, and I'll write git clone and just paste the URL, and then I'll add a period. The period will make it so that the project will be cloned into the directory we're in right now. Let's hit enter. The project is now on our computer. Okay, now since this project has many branches and we want the latest branch, we're gonna need to check it out. The name of the branch we want to check out is part 10. So in my terminal, I'll write git check out part 10. Okay, now let's check that we switched branches successfully with the command git branch. Yep, right now we are on part 10. Now let's create a virtual environment with the command py-m venv, and I'll call my virtual environment venv. Okay, let's hit enter. Okay, here's the virtual environment. Now let's activate it. So venv scripts activate. Now that our virtual environment is active, we can go ahead and install the project's dependencies from requirements.txt. So pip install -r requirements.txt. Let's hit enter. All right, as the dependencies install, I'd like to ask you to hit the like button if you enjoy this type of content. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe. All right, super. The dependencies were installed. Now let's run the first migration, which will set up the database. Migrate. All right, so as you can see, our SQLite database appeared here. Of course, later on, we will create a PostgreSQL database on Seenode and integrate it instead of the SQLite. Right now, we're just testing to see if everything is working as it should. Now, let's run server and see what happens. So py manage.py run server. All right, let's follow link. Okay, so here's our site, but where are the movies? The source of the movies is the movie database, and in order to obtain them, we're gonna need an API key. I'll show you how to get one. But first, let's create a .env file, and that's where we'll be keeping all the secrets that we don't want other people to see. And thanks to the .env package, Django will be able to safely read our environment variables, such as the movie database API key. So I'll just copy the name we've given the key and just paste it in .env and add an equal sign. Now let's get our movie database API key. All you gotta do is just Google the movie database and then click on API. Then you're gonna need an account. I already have an account, so I'll just log in. If you don't have an account, just create one. Once you log in, you can click on API link or just go to this URL and just copy your API key and then paste it in .env. All right, so now that we've obtained the API key, let's restore server. Okay, now let's refresh. Ta-da! Here are the movies. All right, so now that our Django site is working as it should in our dev environment, it's time to move on to part 2, where we'll prepare our site for production. All right, so let's go to settings.py. And as you can see over here, there's a security warning that says keep the secret key used in production secret. And also if you look at the secret key, it says Django insecure. So we need to replace this key. One of the cool things about Django is that it comes with a utility function that allows you to create a secure secret key very quickly. And it is super easy to run from Django Shell. So let's open Django Shell with the command py-manage.py shell. And now let's import get random secret key. So from django.core.management.utils import get random secret key. And now let's run get random secret key. Okay, let's hit enter. And ta-da, we have a secret key. Okay, so let's copy the secret key and let's go to .env and add secret key and then set it to the secret key we have just created. All right, now let's exit shell and let's replace the secret key with os.getEnv secret key between quotation marks. Next up, we want to address this security warning, which says don't run with debug turned on in production. Okay, right now we're in dev mode, so we'd like to keep it true, but we want to find a way to change debug to false after we deploy. So what can we do? We can put it in .env, and that way we'll be able to change its value very easily when we deploy. So let's set debug to os.getEnv debug. And now let's go to that env and set debug to true. But what if debug wasn't set at all? If that's the case, then we want to have the value be false. Also, what if the value of debug in .env is true, but it's written in all caps? Then we still want it to be recognized as true, right? So let's add .lower so it will change everything to lowercase. And let's compare the result to the string true. if whatever this returns is anything other than true, then debug will be set to false. Now let's talk about static files. Static files are your CSS files, your JavaScript files, and your images. When we're in dev mode, which is when debug is set to true, Django handles static files with no problem. However, in production mode, when debug is set to false, we need something extra for the static files. We can set up a dedicated server like Nginx. We can use a CDN, or we can serve our static files from the same server. That's what we'll be doing today using Whitenoise, which makes serving static files in production super easy. So let's go ahead and install it with the command pip install Whitenoise. And then let's add Whitenoise to the middleware list. Okay, so let's scroll down to middleware. And let's paste it under Django security middleware. And now let's add the snippet to our settings file as well, as it will give us forever cacheable files with compression support. Okay, so let's scroll all the way down and paste under where we have static URL. And let's remove this. We'll also need to add static root to set the directory from which Django will be serving our static files. So let's put it right here and set it to base there /static files. So as you know, in production, we run collectstatic to collect all our static files into the static root there, which in our case, we called it static file. So let's test this. Let's run manage.py collect static and see what happens. Let's keep our eye here. Oh, see, something appeared. A directory called static files. Cool. All right. Now, before we move on from talking about static files, I would like to remind you to double check that you have static URL set. If you don't, just add it. Next up, we need to set allowed hosts. Allowed hosts is basically a list of the domains we trust. Django wants us to create this list so it can protect us against HTTP host header attacks. But wait a minute, we still don't know our site's domain. How are we going to add it after we deploy? To keep things flexible, we will be adding our domain name when we find it out as an environment variable. It's going to be so easy. Okay, so let's set allowed hosts to os.getEnv, allowed hosts, and let's not forget to add quotation marks. And to turn this into a list, let's add .split and pass comma as the delimiter. Also, let's give allowed hosts a default value and have it be localhost in case allowed hosts was not found in .env. Also, in order to help protect against cross-site forgery attacks, Django requires us to set CSRF trusted origins if our site is served over HTTPS. If we don't do that and then try to make potentially unsafe requests, like for example a post request, Django will return a 403 forbidden error. So it's important to remember to add it. We'll be setting it to our website's domain, which we still don't know. So like we've done with allowed hosts, let's set CSRF trusted origin to os.getEnv. And here, instead of allowed hosts, let's make it CSRF trusted origins. And let's not forget to add HTTP before localhost like this. Now, how about we create a PostgreSQL database on Seenode and try it out on our project before we deploy it. Okay, so let's navigate to Seenode. Okay, let's log in. On the left side, you can see database written here. Let's click on it. And now let's click on create. And then click on database. And then on PostgreSQL. Seenode named our database ecstatic Thorpe1. Let's change it. Let's make it movie underscore spot underscore DB because movie spot is the name of the website we'll be deploying. All right, let's click on continue. And I've already used 3 days of my free trial. That's why it says 4-day free trial right now. I'll click on start 4-day free trial. But usually you get 7 days. Okay, so our database was created. Now let's connect it to our site. So first we're gonna need a PostgreSQL adapter, psycopg G2 binary will do just fine. So let's install it. All right. We're also gonna need a DJ database. Yeah, DJ database URL. Because it will make connecting the database extremely easy. So let's also install it. And let's import it. Scroll all the way up. All right, and let's scroll to where the databases dictionary is. And what we want to do is connect to the database we've created in Seenode instead of the SQLite3 database that we have right now. DJ database URL makes this super easy. What I'm going to do is copy these lines and I'm going to paste them to replace these 2 lines. DJ database URL.config is going to check our environment variables for a variable with the key database URL. And if it finds it, it's going to parse it into a database config dictionary that Django can read. All right, so let's go back to Seenode and get our database URL. So all you got to do is go to the right side. As you can see, there is a drop menu here under connection. Let's click on it and click on URI and then copy the URI. And now let's paste it in .env. And that should do it. So let's try to run server and see if Django asks us to make migrations, because that would be a good sign. Yay! It says you have 19 unapplied migrations. Perfect. Okay, so let's disconnect server and apply the migrations. Muscle memory, I typed make migrations instead of migrate. There are no migrations to make. So now let's migrate as we intended to do. So as you may know, Django's built-in server is not intended to run in production. It's for development. And so in production, we need to rely on a server intended for production, such as Gunicorn or Green Unicorn. Green Unicorn is super popular because it's so easy to use and it has no dependencies and it's very reliable. let's install it with the command pip install Gunicorn, just so that we can add it to our requirements.txt. Now we are almost done with preparing our app, but before we deploy it, let's do some housekeeping. For example, some of the packages here are not the most recent. So before we deploy, how about we update them? To find out which packages have updates available, we can type the command pip list -- outdated and hit enter. Now that we know which packages have updates available, we can easily upgrade them. So pip install -- upgrade. Okay, let's hit enter. All right, awesome. Our outdated packages were updated. So now let's run pip list and see what we get. Okay, yes, Django's updated, TZ data as well, and the other one. All right, now let's run pip freeze requirements.txt to also update our requirements.txt. Okay, now we're almost ready to push our code to GitHub and get it deployed. However, it would be smart to create a build script. It's optional, but it can save us a lot of time in the future. All right, so as you probably know, the standard for cloud hosting and web servers is Linux. So let's create a shell script. Of course, we want our script to exit on error. So let's add set-e. Next, we definitely want to install dependencies. So let's add pip install our requirements.txt. Then we want to collect static. So Python manage.py collect static. And it is recommended to add the no input flag. Okay, and finally, let's add the command py manage.py migrate. Now our project is ready to be deployed. So what I'll do is push it to GitHub. For now, I'll keep it in a private repo. All right, so now that my code is on GitHub, I log into Seenode. All right, now let's create a new web app. As you can see, I have already connected Seenode to GitHub. However, currently the repository we have just created will not be listed amongst these repos since it's a private repo. So now I'm gonna have to authorize Seenode to access the repo. So let's click on GitHub, which will take us to our GitHub page where we would want to click on settings, followed by applications. Now let's click on the configure button next to Seenode. All right, now let's click on select repositories and find the repository we want to deploy, which we called Django Seenode deploy. Now let's go back to Seenode and refresh. Oh, here it is. Let's click connect. Now it's time to fill in the build and deploy settings. So we have created, as you probably remember, a build script. We would like to run it. However, to make sure that our build script has execute permission, we can add the command chmod, which stands for change mode, and then plus, and then X. And then let's add the path to our build script. So /build.sh. Okay, so now that we're sure that our build.sh file has execute permission, we can run it. So build.sh. Then start command. So as you know, we're using Gunicorn as our server. The start command for Gunicorn is Gunicorn and then my project.wsgi. I'll copy the command and I'll just paste it here. Of course, we need to change my project, replace it with the actual name of our project. So a good way to find your project's name if you're not sure is to go to wsgi.py and you'll find the name right here. Okay, the name of my project is Movie Spot. So I'll replace the word my project with it. Okay, over here it says that app must listen on this address. So I'll just copy it and then add 2 dashes. Oh, this looks like 1 dash, but they're two dashes. And then bind, and then let's just paste the address. Okay, root directory, we can leave it empty as it will default to the repository root anyways. Now it's time to add the environment variables. What I'm gonna do is just open our .env file, hit Ctrl A to select everything, and then Ctrl C to copy everything. And then I'll just paste everything over here. Of course, we don't want debug to be true in production, so let's set it to false. And do you guys remember how we said that we will add allowed hosts to .env and then we'll set it to our site's domain name when we know it? So let's just add, for now, allowed hosts. I'll just add a dot for now, and then when we know the URL, we can just change it. Okay, let's click continue. All right, I'll click on basic. It is deploying. It always feels pretty exciting. Now it says deploy live. We haven't added our domain to allowed hosts yet, so now we get bad request, right? So I'm just gonna copy the domain and then I will go back to variables and then I'll edit allowed hosts, replace the dot we added earlier with the domain and then hit save variables. Okay, now let's restore service. Now let's refresh. Ta-da! It works! Now let's see what happens if we try to log in or create an account. I'm just gonna write whatever. Okay, let's see what happens when we register, which would send a post request. See? Forbidden error 403. Do you know why this happened? If you've guessed that that's because we haven't added our domain to CSRF trusted origins, then you are correct. To fix this, we can go back to Seenode and click on add variable. And the variable we want to add is CSRF trusted origins. So I'll copy it from settings.py and just paste it. Now we just need to add our site's domain name plus HTTPS as the value. So I'll just copy it and paste it and remove the slash at the end. Okay, let's click on save variable. All right. And now let's try to register again. Okay, let's hit register. It worked. Okay, and now we're logged in as Mario17. Here's our hub. That's very cool. Let's log out. That works too. Super! Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video and found it useful. If you have any questions or suggestions, please write them down in the comments. And if you liked the video, give it a like and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Also consider becoming a channel member. See you in the next video. Bye!